Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Product Tales podcast, where we interview product experts on their stories behind the build. This is our first episode ever, and I'm so excited to be joined by Billy Lam. Billy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Julia. It's good to be here.
So, Billy is a product and developer superstar with over 12 years of experience in the field. And I can't wait for our conversation today. Billy has seen a company called Education Perfect, a global ed tech platform, grow from pretty much its inception all the way to 1.8 million students and 50,000 teachers. So that's super impressive and exciting. He's currently working on some really cutting edge AI projects within Education Perfect. So we'll get into that topic soon. But Billy, first, let's start at the beginning. Tell me the story of how you got into product development at Education Perfect.
It's quite an interesting story because I actually studied law and commerce in university. So it's kind of got nothing to do with what I'm doing now. During my second year, I was asked to help out with doing some data entry work for Education Perfect, which back then was still called Language Perfect, since they were just doing languages. So I was just doing some Excel spreadsheet. It was some very boring, mundane stuff. But then, being someone who always tries to find like ways to, spend less effort, I very quickly started experimenting with doing some scripting in Excel, which allowed me to basically do my job a lot faster. But that also sparked my interest in software development. So I just started just learning about programming. Back then, it was just some very simple scripts. And then it kind of slowly evolved into more elaborate programs that I started building. And then later on, I started building apps, designing apps and
Wow.
putting stuff on the marketplace. I think, yeah, my boss was so impressed with what I've done. They basically asked me if I would like to join the company after I graduated, which was really a very good opportunity for me because I've already decided that I didn't want to become a lawyer.
Very different.
Very, very different. I took the opportunity. So once I graduated, I joined EP as a junior software developer. And back then, because the company was so small, we only had 4 people in the development team, and there was no product people, was no designer. So I
Wow.
took on the role of the designer. So I started kind of dabbling with. Back then was just still on Photoshop, I believe. My first design work was done in.
Wow. The,
Um,
the days before Figma, hey?
Exactly. Yeah. It was like Photoshop and then Illustrator. So I would be doing design work for a couple of weeks, and then I'll be doing programming and be a mixture of all kinds of different product and engineering kind of work all rolled into one because the company was small. Like you kind of have to do it. Like you just have to contribute whatever you can.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's how I got started. And I worked at the company for I think just under 9 years. That was my first round at EP.
So 12 years ago now, you started working in their development team, completely self-taught, kind of learning the ropes by yourself with the help of the team and just doing a little bit of everything. That would have been an amazing experience for you to be able to do a little bit of everything and also see the company grow and the product building evolves over time.
Yeah, it was really exciting because as a startup, you get to be involved in a lot of different areas of the product development cycle, which you don't necessarily get. So being able to have my hands on everything. So I was learning so much, and which I was really glad because I didn't have a com sci background, so being able to get a lot of exposure to different kind of work was very good for my development as a developer.
For sure. And, from the first 9 years that you were there, how did you find that the way that product was built within the company changed from when you started, there was a smaller team to, obviously the team growing and the product itself growing as well?
Yeah, so it's very different back then because there's basically like no process. It was just a bunch of developers, and the CTO and the CEO was working very closely with us. So it would just be one day, maybe the CEO has a really interesting idea that he wants to try out. He would just like walk into the dev room and say, "Hey guys, like stop everything today. We're building this. We just want to see that like happen." And we will quickly kind of mock something up, and then we just build it, and then we'll release it in a day or two. It was very quick. Just some the things would change very quickly because we would be building one thing, but then maybe we hear something from our customers that actually, hey, we should just change tech and just try something else. And there was no kind of bureaucracy around because the team was really small, so it was easy to be all on the same page, and we didn't have to communicate, with different people. Like with a bigger company, you would have different teams that are affected by your work. So you need to talk to a lot of people. You can't move as fast. But back then, obviously, as a small team, and that's, I believe, like one of the greatest advantages of a startup is being able to move quickly, and react to the market.
Yeah, for sure. I can totally see how if you have a smaller team, it's easier to just hear the feedback implemented very quickly. I guess for those that are in a smaller team, what would be some things that you've learned from when the team was bigger that you wish you had implemented sooner when the team was smaller?
Introducing more testing in the code base earlier on, because while we were moving really fast at the start, we were kind of throwing out a lot of good like engineering practices out of the window in pursuit of moving really fast. And we were able to move really fast, but then what happens is you get a lot of issues starting to build up. And you could tell that, we're moving really fast and then we're slowing down until like we can't really move anymore. Like bugs would start to kind of build up. So our boss had to kind of triage like the most important ones and then put it in our inbox. And our inbox was filling up really quickly. So it reached a point where we have to dedicate an entire day each week to just do like bug hunting.
Wow.
So we'll stop everything and we'll spend maybe like the whole morning doing that. And it just like kept on getting worse until later on we started, doing more automated testing in the software.
Would it be more automated tests or more manual tests, or would you say like a mix of both?
Oh, we're doing a lot of manual testing. So we call those like monkey testing. So basically we have either it'll be ourselves or we have someone else help us. Usually what we did was before each release, we'll send the pre-release version to everyone in the team, and then we'll just ask, hey, everyone, just stop what you're doing and like, do a test, like do this test session. And we basically have to do that like every time because like we have like zero confidence whether what we've done like wouldn't have broken something
Something
else.
else?
Exactly. Yeah. So we had to run those like really comprehensive tests every time, and it's just slows down things a lot. So definitely that is something that I believe we could have done a better job.
Yeah, 100%. So more testing, maybe slightly more efficient. I mean, I'm biased because we're building Dummy and we're all about software testing.
Of
Um,
course.
but yeah, that's really interesting. And so you were there for 9 years and then you left to work at another startup, First Trail,
Yes.
and then Dummy as well. So Billy was our first developer at Dummy as well. And now you're back at Education Perfect. So tell me a little bit more about what you're doing for them now.
So Education Perfect, they wanted to start looking into introducing AI into the product. So they invited me back, and as part of the AI team, which it was quite a new team and it's still growing. But basically, what we do is we enable other teams in the company to build out AI enabled features, and also in the background, we'll be running different experiments, trying out different ways that we can apply AI, and building prototypes that could be tested internally and also externally to validate ideas and technical feasibility of different AI features. There's a ton of ideas that we have. We can only work on so many at once.
I can imagine.
But having a team that's dedicated to do those kind of R&D work is it's pretty important to try things out.
That's super interesting. I mean, the fact that you have a dedicated AI team is a slightly different approach actually to perhaps what other companies are doing. So let's dive deeper into that for a second. How many people do you have working on this AI team, and what kind of backgrounds do you have on this AI team? So, like, do you have like a machine learning expert or a data science, or what kind of people do you need?
Yeah, so we've got a mixture. So we have people who are experts in machine learning, both in like traditional machine learning and also this new wave of Gen AI. So with expert that would be able to fine tune models and deal with the infrastructure that's needed to enable serving AI features. We also have a product person who deals with talking to other teams, talking to customers, figuring out what we should be building. And obviously, me as an engineer, and also I also do product design as well. So I would be helping out with designing prototypes, building up prototypes, and also helping out with other teams because of my knowledge in the existing code base to help with the integration of AI features into the existing product. So yeah, so we've got a range of different kind of expertise in the team.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, are you guys kind of like a startup within a bigger company? Is that how you operate, or how do you interact with other teams in the company?
We're kind of categorized as an enablement team. So what we do is we would enable other teams to build AI features. So we could be there to provide expertise in AI and large language models. We would help them set up the infrastructure uh, needed to serve the AI features. Like right now, we're still kind of figuring out how to best interact with the rest of the teams. But ideally, we would be working with multiple teams across the company, and each of them will be building out AI features and will be acting as like a supporting role for them. So we actually won't be building the actual like final version of the features. So those will be done by the team. But our role as an enablement team is just to lay the groundwork, do the initial research, and then basically let the teams take over after that initial stage.
So, is it almost the same as technical feasibility in some ways, and I guess market demand?
I mean, we do some of those roles, but we also provide technical support and also building out infrastructure as well. So to serve AI models requires a lot of it's quite like a different set of infrastructure compared to traditional like server and backend architecture.
Yeah, I can also imagine that working for a bigger company with the AI, there's quite a lot of challenges introducing AI based features into an existing product. What are some challenges that you found along the way as you've been working with the team on implementing AI into the software?
When you have an existing product and you want to introduce AI, it's very easy to get into the mindset where maybe you just have something tagged on to the product. A lot of products seems like they just have a chatbot and they just have a chat, and it's very easy to do that because with a existing product that is quite mature, you kind of have existing patterns of doing things. The code probably wasn't anticipating adding features such as AI into it because AI would cut across a lot of different kinds of interactions and different ways that it could interact with the product. And I think it was similar for us as well, because our existing product, it was already real mature. To add AI in require a lot of digging really deep into the code base, and sometimes that could be challenging because if we change too much, we might risk breaking other stuff as well.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that, with the rise in AI, there have been a bit of a rush for companies to say
Mm.
that they have AI features into their software, and a lot of companies have taken the road of let's just add something that we can easily integrate, but perhaps have not spent the time required thinking about the user experience. So tell me how you approach the user experience when working on an AI project. Is it the same as any other feature, or do you have to think differently because you're working with AI?
I think the process is quite similar. Like you start with figuring out what the pain points are, like from a user's perspective, like what is slowing them down or what is actually making them feel like their experience is not as good as it could be. Rather than saying this is what AI could do, like can we find a way to use this technology? I think we should always start from the perspective of the users, and this is I don't see this as any different to traditional product research. So you have to go out there, you have to make sure that what you're building is actually what the user wants. Ideally, you would want to build something that people will want to use regularly, and you want to build something that makes people feel like if you take this away from them, they would be very, very annoyed. Like how I couldn't imagine how could have like functioned like before this product. So that's the kind of like in one extreme, like that's like the ideal. It's like with any other products, right? Let's say Gmail. Like without Gmail, you'd be like how am I gonna function? So I think it's important to not be kind of influenced by like the novelty factor of AI, but
Yeah,
rather you have to go back to the fundamentals of what building a good product means.
I love that. I totally agree with you. So you must have to kind of toe a fine line between building things that users want versus understanding the technical feasibility and capabilities of something like AI. Because, I would love to wake up tomorrow and have AI that can do everything for me automatically, but that's not quite the reality right now. So, how do
Mm.
you kind of balance expectations of what's possible versus what, the users want or what you would like to build for the users?
I think this is where doing prototyping early on really helps, because sometimes it feels like there are things that AI you expect it to be really good at. For example, if you're building something that would help you write an email, AI today probably is going to do a really good job. But imagine, say, if the AI wasn't quite there yet, maybe it was a year or two ago. AI could generate text, but it would generate something that maybe like 50% there. Like it will still get the job done, right? But then you might end up having to spend more time editing and fixing things uh, that it ended up not being that much of a time saver, or you might even spend just as much time fixing things. So you at that point you might as well just have written it yourself. So sometimes you have to be realistic about what the technology is at today, and the only way to find out is just to try it out. And so that's why it's important to build out prototypes very really early on, just to do these kind of technical feasibility tests to see is it even in the ballpark of being a realistic achievement. The new technologies coming out, and the way that you program a like generative AI is quite different to how you would code in the traditional manner. So you can experiment with different ways of trying to prompt a model, but there's no way of knowing exactly what's going to come out the other end.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you as well, with AI in a model like that, how then do you test for it? How do you know that it's actually going to be delivering what you want it to deliver to your users every time consistently?
Like just like with traditional software, you would need to run tests on it. So usually, what you would do is you have a set of tests that would evaluate the output of the AI. So, for example, you say if you're talking about like a customer support AI, then you would be able to do things like given this user question, what would be the answer that
Right.
you would want to have, right? So you have a list of tests that goes through all sorts of different scenarios with challenging questions and all that, and you would run the tests every time you change the model or you change any of the prompts, and then you have to make sure that everything checks out the way that you expect it to. And with like an open-ended model like this, you also have to check for things like in terms of content appropriateness. So if there's offensive languages, offensive kind of content involved, you would have to do some sort of either moderation or you have to just filter things out. So that adds in a whole another dimension of QA kind of issues.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you obviously have been doing this for a while now. And I'm really curious to learn what are some learnings that you found throughout this journey of building AI prototypes that you can share so that hopefully other people that are building as AI don't have to make the same mistakes.
There's always the compromise between performance and cost in a kind of enterprise level when you've got like thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers, then cost becomes an issue. And models like, for example, say the um, like OpenAI's latest models, they're actually quite expensive to run. Like with a lot of users are using it constantly. It actually costs a lot of money. So a lot of companies would choose to use like lower end, not cutting edge models. But obviously they wouldn't perform as well, right?
Right.
Um, but what I've kind of learned is when you try to see if something is doable or not, like with Gen AI, like it's generally good to just experiment with the best model available today, and and to see like if it's even feasible. If it is, right, then there are ways to reduce costs. Through either using a smaller model, but you improve the prompting, or you would fine tune it to your specific application. So even a smaller model will be able to do just as well as a bigger model before fine tuning. So there are ways to optimize, and you can also turn bigger models, kind of compress it, what we call like quantization. So you compress it to make it more efficient to run, like without too much of a performance cost. And then I also think probably the biggest factor why I think it's good to just start with the best, just experiment with the best model first, is because models are always getting cheaper. So what is expensive today with this performance, with this cost kind of ratio, you can be pretty confident that in like 3 to 6 months time, like it's going to be a lot cheaper.
I understand. So don't worry too much about the cost. Just understand the feasibility first and then see if you can kind of optimize down in some ways to get still the desired result. That makes a lot of sense. What's the coolest thing that you have ever built with AI?
The thing that I was most passionate about was building uh, a bot that could talk to your database. You'll be able to ask a question about the business, and then the AI is able to go into your data, like write a query for your database, and then query the information um, from the database, and then give you an answer based on the data it collected from the database. And that was really fascinating because I was able to learn about multi-step kind of chain of thought generation. So the AI would need to deconstruct the question that the user is asking, break it down into several steps of like what it needs to do next, and then also it needs to go outside of its little black box and look for information outside. And then how would it be able to interact with the database? And it needs to talk in the language that the database understands, which is SQL. So it needs to generate the correct SQL. And also it needs to understand the database schema because each database is different. It's built differently. It needs to know what table names it has and what each table means and what columns it needs to extract the information from. So there's all that there. And that was definitely a really cool learning experience for me. And being able to build something like that and just seeing it go through and kind of like go through the process. It's like, okay, now I need to do this, I need to do that. And now I'm getting information from the database. And it would even be able to do things like run a query from the database, but then it comes back with some error. And then it will look at the error and say, hey, this is the error. This is what I need to do to fix it. And then it will create a different query based on the error and ask the database again until it's satisfied with the data, and then it will give you the answer. So that was a pretty cool kind of project that I did.
And so, what's your best advice for someone that is in product but is not yet working with AI to get into an AI based job? What kind of skills do you recommend that somebody looks to build?
Yeah, I think now is definitely a really good time to explore this because it's such a new industry. Like I don't imagine that there would be anyone with more than 2 years of experience like building like Gen AI products. And also the industry is still very much in its infancy. There's a lot of even like free courses online that you could do. I think the most important thing is just to build something, right? Just to
And
start building things. It's actually really easy now that you don't even need to know how to code like at a certain level because you could get AI to generate the code for you as well. Like I remember when I started, like before I started coding, like this is back then when I was doing law school, I would have thought like it's impossible. That's too hard. I'm not smart enough. I can't do that. But then once you start doing it, you actually realize like everything like you would learn slowly, especially with now with the help of AI, you could actually ask it to explain things to you, in a way that you understand. I believe like every company would need some kind of expertise in helping them apply AI to the process or the products. So I think there's definitely a lot of demand, and because it's so new, the number of people who are actual experiences is not that much.
And so, similarly, for perhaps a younger company that is wanting to start thinking about AI and how they can, use AI within their product, like you said before, making sure that it is actually solving a user problem and you're not just slapping AI into your product. But what kind of steps do you recommend that a company goes through to get that process started?
It wouldn't be too different to like traditional like market product development. You always start with identifying what value you want to add for the users, and then it'll just be around like going out to users and getting really early feedback. Maybe you want to build something that's really really simple, just to validate certain design ideas, just to make sure like even before you see whether something is technically feasible, you want to see is this even what people want.
Yeah. And would I need something like an AI expert, or do you think that if you already have a team in place and you have somebody that is a developer and someone that is in charge of product, could you kind of figure it out within the team, or do you think that companies need to find somebody external?
Like I said, because this is such a new field, I think startups would struggle to find someone with experience because they're so high in demand. So I believe there's nothing that's stopping existing team members to just upskill and learn themselves. Like any competent like software engineers should be able to pick this up relatively quickly. And because a lot of the uh, part of building an AI product is doing the prompting work, and the prompting work doesn't actually need to be done by the engineer. Like it could be done by the product person, which might actually be in a better place to write those prompts. because they understand the users probably better than the engineers. So one example, something that I learned from I think Duolingo.
Yep.
So they've got AI integrated with their app, and in one of the talks, I believe they talked about in the AI development process. I believe all the prompts are written by subject matter experts. So this will be linguists. Um, this will be like people with special like with the knowledge in either education or language. So if I remember correctly, like the engineers are not actually allowed to change the prompts without getting it reviewed by the subject matter experts.
Wow.
So it kind of flipped the way that you imagine like product to be built. And in a way that makes sense because when you're trying to program a large language model, you're speaking in English. You're not speaking in code. So there's a lot of nuance in the language that you would feed it. And a lot of that doesn't require someone with engineering background to do well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I actually never thought about it that way. Although, it makes so much sense. I guess that would definitely change the way that companies in the future potentially build products. Like you're saying,
Mm.
the product owners would have a slightly different skill set, and maybe the developers would also adapt because you're dealing more prompts than necessarily just hard coding. Awesome. One last question that I'll be asking every guest. What is something that you wished you could tell your younger self when you were just getting started on your first product role?
Just like don't be afraid to try new things and don't limit yourself to what you think you can and can't do.
I love that.
Because I think I was in that boat, say before I started, learning about programming. Like I thought I would never be able to do this. Like, even though I thought I would like to do it, I think about programmers. I think they're like all geniuses. They're all like really, really smart, and I will never be able to understand that. Like it's like the Matrix. It's like, oh, what is this like? I would never be able to understand. But once you get started, you'll be like, hey, it's just like learning another language, and you just need to think logically. And I think one thing that I kind of distinctly remember when I was younger is one summer I was really fascinated with like 3D design,
Oh, yeah.
because I was looking at like people able to recreate the world in 3D. So one summer I was looking into like 3D applications that build 3D stuff, and then I was so into it. I was like so fascinated that I recreated my entire house in 3D. So I
Wow.
was I was like I was building my chair, my table, and I even got a floor plan of our house. Like I asked my parents for a floor plan, and then I like built the whole thing in SketchUp. And then I was learning about like ray tracing. Like I think probably a lot of people would be too afraid to take that first step, and like that would you know stop them from doing something potentially that they would become really great at.
I love that. It's a beautiful message. So don't be scared of taking the first step and give it a go. Even if you don't know how to do it, you can always figure it out. Love that.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Billy. It's been really nice to chat, and I've learned a lot about product and AI today. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
no worries.
All right, and that's a wrap for another Product Tales podcast. If you'd like to share your own product tales with us, please contact us via the contact information in the show notes. We would love to have you as a podcast guest or just get your feedback. Bye for now.